Ziegfeld Follies marks the beginning of a startling new era in the world of entertainment. The Ziegfeld Follies is music and magic, laughter, romance, and America's most beautiful girls. The Ziegfeld Follies is big beyond all comparison, spectacular beyond your most fantastic dreams. It is entertainment unequaled in the history of motion pictures, bringing to this theater the greatest assemblage of celebrated talent ever to appear in one show on stage or screen.
Here's to the beautiful ladies, here's to those wonderful girls, Adele's and Molly's, Lucille's and Polly's, you'll find them all in the Ziegfeld Follies.
Hey, lady rock now, Dixie, what more do you want?
Madam Cramaton's
Hallelujah, hallelujah, hallelujah.
And suddenly you'll find it's true that love is beauty too. Oh, love can be a cup of sorrow, love can be a lie, love can make you wake tomorrow and sigh.
Hello, how are you? How's the folks? What's new?
Libiamo, amore, amore fra I corici più cari baci avrà.
For pity's sake, pay the $2.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Disney Reel to Reel, a deep, deep, deep delve into the Disney animated canon. This month, I am continuing to fudge up the timeline of my series because I have this movie that I want to talk about, and I just can't help myself. Today, we are discussing the Metro Goldwyn Mayer 1946 Technicolor extravaganza, Ziegfeld Follies. But joining me is a very distinguished guest. It's actually somebody that I first shared this idea with, like, God knows how many years ago, and I'm finally returning the favor this wonderful, wonderful day. Miss Laria Miller is here. Welcome to the show.
Yes, hello. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for you and for this project, and I'm just glad to be here.
Yes. Actually, if I could part the curtain a little bit for our listeners, Disney Reel to Reel, it hasn't been like an overnight production of mine. This was something that I wanted to do as far back as 2017. It was an idea that came up when I was taking a honors level English course. But one of the topics that she discussed was the Cinderella myth, which was about how, like, young adults are basically disappointed by fairy tales, and they always teach you these wonderful gender roles and all of this bullshit that I just tried to eat up as much as I could. But I remember sharing this idea with you around that time, and I was even went so far as being like, oh, like, do you think we could, like, find a spot to record? Like, I think you had, like, a garage or something in Gosport or something that you were willing to put up.
Probably. God knows. I'm always trying to offer up, wherever I live, wherever my family lives. Yeah, use my space. Let's do this.
Yeah. Oh, very, very charitable. But I guess I actually don't know. Like, I have questions that I ask my guests right off the bat, but with this one, it's going to be kind of tricky because I typically ask Disney-based questions, but obviously we're not talking about a Disney film today. But I guess, do you have any history, like prior history with movie musicals?
Honestly, not particularly. I have my minor in theater and drama from Indiana University, Bloomington, so I've done a little bit of research on Broadway and the like, but I am in no way an expert by any means.
Actually, what year are you in right now?
I'm in my last year of undergrad, so I'm technically a senior right now.
Twinsies!
I know, we're so close.
So damn close. My brain is melting into ice cream.
I can taste it, I swear.
But I guess there is one thing that we have both done recently. We had this lovely community theater production of Singing in the Rain. Care to elaborate?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. What even more is there to say on that experience? I mean, on the bright side, working with Gene Kelly's work was so much fun and so interesting to learn about. I had no idea who Sid Charisse was before we worked on that production, but I was really glad I knew who she was watching this movie, because she makes a couple of appearances. But yeah, that was an experience.
Yeah. Yeah. I just remember how much I was trying to grin and bear it whenever people were talking about various rumors that I'd heard about him and stuff, like, oh, how he like forced kissed Debbie Reynolds on one day they were filming and she was uncomfortable. But I've done my research. I've spoken to some sources.
Wonderful.
Sources as far as Gene Kelly's third wife. And I can confirm that he genuinely thought that that was what he was supposed to do, because a little somebody named Judy Garland taught him how to kiss on camera. So
that just tracks so much.
yes, it does.
It's just so full circle.
Yeah. Well, because she was actually partly responsible for him coming out to Hollywood in the first place, because she was like, oh, this guy, he's on Broadway right now. I think he's kind of great. He could do some stuff in motion pictures, as they always used to call them. Why don't we bring him out? And they were like, oh, I don't know about that. But then they did a screen test, and those two were like, the chemistry was like what's the text phrase? It's like OMG Romantalicious or something. Romantalicious, yes.
So was that movie Gene Kelly's first motion picture?
Yeah, it was called For Me and My Gal.
Oh, okay. Wonderful.
Yes.
That's some great context. Thank you.
Yes, no problem. And then, yeah, they did that, and he was pretty successful, but then, they still didn't know what to do with him, so they kept putting him in these, like, B-rate drama movies and stuff. He did a few musicals here and there, but then he went off to war. I think he did that after he did his parts for Ziegfeld Follies. But then he went off to join the armed forces, and then he came back, and then he did a lovely movie with Judy called The Pirate, which I talked to Gene's wife about in an earlier episode, so looking forward to that.
Wonderful.
Yes. But anyway, yeah, Singing in the Rain was definitely an interesting experience. But going back to this film, Ziegfeld Follies of 1946. It's from Metro Goldwyn Mayer, produced by Arthur Freed, who, depending on who you ask, he's either like the godfather of the American movie musical, or he's an absolute creep. Just ask Shirley Temple Black. That's all you need to know. The film is mostly directed by Vincent Minnelli, who was dating Judy at this time. They had just come off a movie called Meet Me in St. Louis, where they fell in love. And then a year later, they would have their first kid, Liza Minnelli.
Liza Minnelli.
Yes. It's Liza with a Z. With a Z.
How can you go wrong?
Yes. She's wonderful. But then we had individual segments directed by people including Lemuel Ayres, Roy Del Ruth, Robert Lewis, George Sidney, Merrill Pyle, Norman Torog, and Chuck Walters, or Charles. This film was inspired by the many theatrical revues on Broadway, headed by Florenz Ziegfeld Jr., which ran between 1907 and 1931, which were themselves inspired by the Folies Bergère of Paris. So I just imagine that this was like the cheap, like Burger King version of the Folies Bergère.
Not the cheap Burger King version. No, but yeah. I see what you mean.
Yeah, it's very, very American.
It's so Americanized. I mean, Broadway is such a distinctly American element to our culture. I mean, like, sure, you got West End in London, but there's nothing like Broadway. And I mean that in all the best and the worst ways.
Yes. Well, especially because back in the day, motion pictures were so influenced by Broadway shows. Like, that's all that producers were interested in buying the rights from, apart from literature and stuff like that. But now we live in a world where movies influence Broadway, and I am cringing.
Oh, yeah, it's so backwards.
Yeah. We don't have to talk about Frozen the musical. No.
Don't even get me started on Anastasia. Don't even
Nope.
get me... Don't get...
Nope.
It's not worth it. It's not worth
Ma'am?
the pain.
Ma'am, no. Not today. Not today.
Oh, we have suffered.
Yes. But the film premiered in Boston, Massachusetts on the 20th of August, 1945. So it was kind of in production for like a year and a half, because originally this movie could have been 3 hours long, because they just were gushing over all of the glitz and glamour that they had at their disposal. But they were like, hey, we need to make money, so like let's just keep the real good stuff.
Of course, comes down to the money every time.
And then it went into wide release on the 8th of April, 1946. Its total budget was $3.2 million, but it made $5.3 million at the box office. So definitely turned a profit, but it still was a loss of $269,000 because of how long it took to produce.
Oh, okay. Interesting how that happens.
Yep. And actually, it did get a bit of prestige in that it was entered into the 1947 Cannes Film Festival, along with Walt Disney's Dumbo, among other entries. It's just weird because, like, the Cannes Film Festival, it's like they typically focus on European filmmakers and their productions, and then you get these few American entries in there, and it's typically the most mainstream content, especially in the early days. So, but yeah, Disney made his way in there a few times as well.
Interesting.
Yes, and it actually won the award for Best Musical Comedy at the festival, so did pretty well for itself.
Okay. Yeah, not bad.
So, we can now talk about our general thoughts on the movie. I take it that it was your first time watching this, so what did you think?
That it was. I had to watch it a couple of times. I first watched it when you first sent it to me, and then I had to rewatch it this morning just to make sure that it was fresh in my mind. But I mean, at a glance, looking at the poster, you see names like Vincent Minnelli and Judy Garland and Fanny Bryce and Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire. Like, how can it get any better than that? And then the movie starts. And of course we have that whole intro scene that I'm sure we'll circle back to, which is one thing, and it's fine. And then there's the blackface. And the weird Native American portrayals. And I was like, okay, this is a product of its time, and I think I know what I'm getting into. But I don't think there is any way that you can possibly know what you're getting into when it comes to Ziegfeld's Follies. I don't think there is a way.
Unless you go into it with even lower expectations, when you're like, oh, this is just going to be beautiful girls for the whole 2 hours. But then it's like, no, we've actually got some substantial material going on here.
Yeah, I was surprised, because especially since, they state that Ziegfeld, he's not here for stories, for the plot. He's here just for the beautiful women and whatever. But then you have shorts that have stories. They have background information, written into them. I'm thinking specifically about the one that was, it was the first one with Fred Astaire, and, that one.
Yeah.
We get his whole background in, being a swindler and, thief in short terms. So we get who he was before. We see him fall in love with this beautiful young lady dripping in jewels. We see him kind of fall for the jewels after, of course, falling for her. And then we see them fall for each other, and he, I'm assuming, gives up the jewels. That's a whole story right there. So Ziegfeld, you can't fool me. You're a storyteller.
Yeah, I think that might be one of the few where we actually see a character arc of any kind.
Yeah, I think that is accurate. It is one of the few. But it's there.
Well, I've known about Ziegfeld Follies since I was, I think, 13 to 14 years old. Because, of course, being me, the first thing that made me want to watch this film was Judy Garland, above all else. I was, like, trying to go through her filmography at one point, just trying to binge all this stuff. And I was like, okay, well, she's only in here for, like, 10 minutes, but she still makes an impact, so...
Listen, Judy Garland, she's got her name on that thing. That's all that matters.
Yes. Well, and it's just from what I've been reading about, like, from the reviews, both from the time and from today, it's like, she is kind of the only thing that matters in this movie.
Dang. Wait, so what do you mean by that?
I mean by, like, everyone, like, most everyone, I'd say apart from Lena Horne, Fred and Jean, maybe Katherine Grayson. I'm not entirely sure about that one. Everyone else, they're giving a performance that is very timely and of that specific moment. Whereas Judy, it's like she's hamming it up to the nines, and it's like you could see drag queens doing that today, and it would still play across the same way.
100%.
But interestingly enough, that number, they originally wanted to do it with this more dramatic British actress named Greer Garson, who had been in movies like Mrs. Miniver, and she was in the 1940s version of Pride and Prejudice, which you may or may not have seen. I don't know.
I have not, but I am familiar.
Okay. Well, she was known at the time for playing very important women in these, like, biopics, if you could call them that, in the 1940s.
Much like in this scene, I suppose.
Yeah, she was kind of like the what's an actress who does the same thing these days?
Oh, geez.
Someone who plays important women.
God, that's a great question. I mean, the thing about movies coming out right now, though, is that I don't think there is one single actress that's playing, you know, all of the women that they're making these biographical films about right now. Mm-hmm. Like, the same actress can't play, you know, Marilyn Monroe and... Oh God, who's another one that's had a movie recently made about her?
Well, I mean, even just like 3 years ago, they did Judy with Renee Zellweger.
Yeah, I didn't see that one either.
Yeah, I don't hate it as much as I hate Blonde, but
yeah.
I think that the expectations of modern audiences and, like, singing techniques and, like, storytelling and stuff, it kind of forced that to be something it wasn't. So yeah, that is something that I thought about a lot throughout this film, was just the difference in vocal techniques and acting techniques, and
you know, the difference in physical comedy in the telephone scene, and what's the other one where with the gin commercial. That's not something that you would ever see unironically in a film produced today.
No, I don't think so.
But I also love it for what it is, especially the physical comedy.
Yeah. But I think I think my big takeaway is that up to this recent viewing, I had just taken it as it was. Like, I didn't feel the need to criticize it that much.
Sure.
But now it's kind of hard to be complacent about certain issues.
It might be time. It might be time to address the second Fred Astaire and who was his scene partner in that one?
Lucille Bremer.
Yes, Lucille Bremer. Oh, that scene.
Yeah.
It's time to think about it.
It's time to think about it, but also, like, I feel like back in the day, I just used to trim it up to, like, creative expression and being like, oh, well, they are just trying to pick the right people to, like, depict this sequence of events, right. And they just, you know, they're trying to tell the story as best they can with the people that they have. Exactly. And now I'm like, we could have done better.
It can't be that simple. Yeah, it is hard to see it for what it is as a product of its time, because, you know, I saw that scene and my first thoughts in my head were like, okay, this is just a deeply Americanized version of just viewing Eastern culture through a Western lens. Like,
Yes.
through the thickest Western lens a Western lens can possibly be. And that was that scene.
Yes. Which is funny because it's supposed to take place in this Asian district in England. Like, it's actually based on a real place.
I didn't know it was supposed to be in England. That is interesting.
Yeah, but yeah, I'm trying to think, like, the only thing I really liked was the song Limehouse Blues.
Which one? God, I'm so terrible with the titles.
It was the song that the lady in the bar was singing in the background.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. That was the only thing I liked.
That's the only highlight of that scene, 100%.
Yeah. But yeah, I guess we can circle back to the beginning. We've gotten general
Sorry,
thoughts.
I'm a little non-linear.
No, it's fine. So let's see, we got this intro. This movie has got a hard-on for Florian Ziegfeld. Because it puts him in this place where they pan through all of these arenas or these venues that are like themed to like Shakespeare, P.T. Barnum, which is yikes right now.
I theoretically iconic entertainment realms.
Yes. Was there someone else I forgot, or was it just the three?
I think it's just Shakespeare, Barnum, and then Ziegfeld.
Okay, great. So I guess maybe we could talk about what didn't happen first. So we were originally supposed to have this stop-motion character of Leo the Lion. You know, the lion that roars at the beginning of all these godforsaken movies. Not all of them. You know, we keep the Wizard of Oz for a good reason, but you know.
This is true. With the MGM lion, he has his job, and he does it to the best of his abilities.
Yes, but then they make him speak like a typical mid-Atlantic American man, and he's talking about how he doesn't want to be in any of these like Western movies or these action movies, but he wants to be in an honest-to-God musical. And he talks about the history of the first Ziegfeld Follies and all the iconic performers that came up through this, some of which did not make it through ethical means. Then they also were to have talked about a man named Burt Williams, who was one of the first African-American performers in the Follies. And he had this trademark song called Nobody. But the unfortunate thing is that the system was so fucked up in like 1916 or whatever that he himself had to perform in blackface.
Oh, God. Yep.
Nope. It's sad, it's ugly, I don't like it.
That's just gonna be processing for the rest of the day for me.
Yeah. I'm sorry. There's just a lot of, like... How do I put it? It's kind of like when we used to talk about America through this one perspective of, like, the Founding Fathers and, like, Manifest Destiny and Go West Young Man, like, all of that shitty ideology. This movie is very much based in that as well.
That sounds about right. Yep, that tracks.
Yes. But anyway. But then they also had a man named Eddie Cantor performing in blackface. And the shitty part is that in the final cut of the film, they cut Bert's part and left in Eddie's. And I'm assuming that it's because somebody must have left it on a comment in a preview card when it was, like, first screened, and they were like, I don't know, I'm a racist, I don't like this.
Yeah. Funny how that happens, huh?
Yeah. Yeah. But basically, yeah, all that stuff happened. It was really awkward and ugly and could have been progressive, I guess, for the time, but I don't know.
Right.
But then, what we decided on instead was to visit Flo in his bed chambers in heaven, which I'll admit is a little more fabulous, but...
See, I think that I might actually have to agree with the ultimate decision to have the man himself in all of his glory, if that's what I can call it, rather than, the MGM lion talking about him, because in that lion segment, it was still just this giant hard-on for Ziegfeld. And I think by having the man do it himself, was at least being honest about it, you know, with him just like reminiscing on the good old days.
Yeah.
Rather than having some third party do it for him. I think that would have been a poor buffer to the perhaps narcissism of this man. But
yeah, well, plus this lion just never shut the fuck up. He was always talking on and on about how great Ziegfeld was.
And I think that was more unsettling than just watching Ziegfeld himself play with his dolls.
Yeah. Speaking of which, yeah, all of that exposition was played out with the use of Lou Bunnan's puppets, which was a popular marionette designer and filmmaker at this time.
The style looked familiar.
Yeah, well, and the interesting thing about him is that, I don't know when this section of the film was shot and all of that, but I'll just go ahead and say 4 years later, he would go on to produce this stop-motion version of Alice in Wonderland in France. And it comes back to Disney because by 1951, the Disney version of Alice was scheduled for release in July, and his version hadn't yet been released in the United States. So Disney kind of threatened that his film not be shown around the same time as his Alice so as to, like, avoid competition.
Yeah. That is interesting.
Yeah.
It's a very French thing to do.
Yeah, I don't know. I haven't seen that many French adaptations of fairy tales and stuff. Like, there were a few back in, like, the 1900s and stuff, but...
Yeah. Alice in Wonderland just feels very French to me.
Why is that?
God, probably because it's so deeply European, with all the talk about Anglo-Saxons and all that garbage. It's like... white people in Europe.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I feel like that's more of an English thing to do.
Yeah.
But basically, to sum up the anecdote about Bunnan and Disney, I think they basically had like a court ruling or something that was like, these two films should be encouraged to compete with each other, and like, there shouldn't be a monopoly on film adaptations of anything. So like,
hey, more Disney foreshadowing, but later to be seen in history.
Yeah. What are you thinking of?
Oh, just Disney in general.
Yeah.
Yeah, they've done a lot of purchasing. They got not quite a monopoly. You topic for another day.
Yeah. Well, did you hear that their CEO of the last year and a half, he just got the boot and the old one just came back?
I did not know that.
Yes.
Wasn't the CEO from Indiana? I think he went to IU.
Yes, it was Bob
I heard
Paycheck.
that man. Bob Paycheck? That was this man's last name?
Chapek. That was his last name.
Chapek. Oh, thank God. I really thought they had done this man that dirty. Talk about historical foreshadowing.
Yeah, oh my God. I'm so glad he left. I just need to apologize on behalf of every citizen of Indiana. We didn't know what monster we created.
Yeah, I had no idea what this man was doing. I only heard the good news of being represented, Indiana University.
Yeah, but no, he's made many a Disney fan very unhappy. So
I can see how that tracks.
Yes, it's over. I don't have to talk about it. I'm going to cleanse my skin.
Not our problem anymore.
Not my problem. But let's see. So then Flo, he goes out on his fabulous cloud side balcony to announce Fred Astaire as the opening act. And the number they do is Bring On the Girls. And this is probably the most fabulous this film ever got.
I do think they started it out with a bang and then went somewhere from there.
Yep.
For sure.
They didn't go downhill, but they went somewhere. And actually, it did get me thinking. I was like, okay, so in 1946, this movie would have been made primarily for, let's say, middle-aged, cis, heterosexual, white men.
Yeah, for sure.
But do you think this movie would still appeal to lesbians?
As a woman who does enjoy women, myself, I can say that it appeals to the lesbians. At least, I took notes the first time that I watched it.
Mm.
And one of my main notes was commenting on the black cat gowns.
Yes, I knew you would say something about
that. The
that.
skin they went for was ambitious, and it was delicious.
Yes!
I think they did everything right with those gowns. I think they did everything right in the costuming department in general for that opening scene. It was gorgeous. Like, he said he was going to have pink, and that's exactly what he got.
And the claws.
The claws. The attention to detail. Even when these women were just, like, repeating the same motion back and forth, like, at the end of the scene, you know, when it, like, zooms out and you have this gorgeous vision. It's like, it was everything I could have wanted.
Yes. Oh, my God. And the fact that they're doing that in front of Lucille Ball, who's about to, like, fuck up a chocolate bar assembly line in, like, 10 years.
Was this before her show? It must
yes,
have been
this was
before
way
her show.
before I Love Lucy.
That's so fun. She looks exactly the same. She does not age a single day between the filming of that scene and her show.
No. But I feel like it's interesting because MGM wasn't the first studio that she worked for. Like, she had done some stuff at RKO Radio Pictures beforehand, and they didn't know what to do with her. But then she came to MGM, and they decided to make her, like everybody else, this glamorous bombshell of a woman. And then she does television work, and she just gets to be funny and herself and expressive. And I'm like, yes, please, feed me more of this.
She is very unique in that scene, and maybe it's because she's the only redhead that you see.
Yeah.
But if that's the effect that they were going for, they got it.
Yes, absolutely. And the cinematography, it was just like... It's amazing how they made such, like, a full open space feel so, like, minimalist and claustrophobic in some places.
Truly.
And then it just opens up and you're like, I am reborn. I am... I'm ecstatic.
100%. That's how I felt about Fred Astaire's scene. The other one with... God, what is her name? I feel so bad that I can't remember her name ever.
Well, we'll get back to that in just a second.
Yes. Anyway, scenic design was wonderful.
Yes.
Absolutely.
But then we see Virginia O'Brien. She comes out and does Bring On These Wonderful Men. And she was here. I was happy to see her.
She was.
Yep.
In all honesty, yeah. I don't know if I have much more to say about it than that.
Yeah, well, I'm just thinking about it because it's like, okay, there's nothing in this movie for gay dudes, so I was like, this is the closest we're gonna get, and I'm like, fine.
Yeah, for the amount that Fred is featured in this movie, like, he's not giving us much.
No. Well, I think it's because he probably got, like, a brand image of himself at this point, so it's like...
Yeah.
He's gone past the days of, like, being this, like, slick, witty guy. Now he can just get off on being elegant and a great dancer and stuff.
Yeah.
Which, I mean, he's got a lot of that.
Absolutely, yeah.
Yeah. But then what was next? I think it was The Water Ballet with Esther Williams.
Mm.
Let's just say she's got a lot of these in her movies.
Really? It did seem like this was not the first time that she had done a scene like this.
Nope. And it wouldn't be the last.
I'm sure. I mean, I guess that's kind of the whole point, though, is Ziegfeld just being like, these are my gorgeous dolls that I have created, their personalities and their images. Let me show you their images. And it proceeds to show you their images.
Yeah. Even though now it's like we've got... Well, here's the really shitty part. It's like they're talking about... The only representation they really want to focus on is the shift in, like, newer, younger talent.
Right.
And, of course, you obviously can't, like, loan people out from other studios to be in this movie, because then that would be a violation of the studio contracts. So...
Yeah.
Yeah. God, those fucking sucked.
Yeah, we don't deal with that anymore, do we?
No, we
you
don't.
get your agent and things, and then it's almost like being an actor is almost like being freelance, you know?
Yeah.
You take the jobs you want, and you don't take the ones you don't, and you hope that you get work in the first place.
Yes, of course. But let's see. What was the next one? I forgot.
Oh god, where did my notes go?
It was either the telephone one or it was the pay the $2.
It was one of those two. I don't think I took any notes on the pay the $2 one because there was just so much. There was just so much going on there. That was the one that stressed me out the most. Are we just talking about this one now? While we're on it.
Well, you have more to say about it than I do because I just wasn't into the comedy skits for the most part.
No, that one wasn't really funny for me. It was almost just too stressful to be funny to me.
Yeah.
Like, this man went from spitting on the subway ground to receiving the death sentence for accidental manslaughter for two people that they somehow linked to this man specifically spitting on the subway. It just didn't quite track for me. It wasn't really funny. It was just sad. I was just really sad for this man the whole time. And I think that's all I can say about it.
That's far more than I can say, which is just, for pity's sake, pay the $2.
Just pay the $2.
All right, we can talk about the next one.
Anyway, the phone
so the
scene.
The one with Keenan Wynn.
I think he did a really great job with this scene. Mostly because his physical comedy is what sticks with me.
Mm-hmm.
Just, working with the phone and working under the table, and, it was just fun and active. But, yeah, the moment that really got me was just when he ate the phone. I think that was the biggest startle in the entire... That was the one thing that I was not expecting. They sure got me with that.
Yeah. And of course, he got a lot. I'm sure he got a lot of training on that, doing routines like that from his dad, who was Ed Wynn. You might not know his name, but you probably know what he's done. Have you seen Mary Poppins?
Of course.
Okay, he's Uncle Albert.
Okay.
Yeah. And he was also the Mad Hatter in Alice in Wonderland and various roles for Disney. So
very much, type character.
Yes. But yeah, his son, it's not that I don't like him as a performer, it's just that I guess he has a brand of comedy that kind of is hit or miss with me.
Yeah. See, I appreciate the physical comedy for what it is as a product of its time. Mm-hmm. But beyond that, it was kind of inconsequential.
Yeah. And then it's the first half of this movie, most of the segments, they're just strung along in my brain, whereas the second half, it's crystal clear. I know the ordering. So please refresh me on what happened next.
Okay, after the phone or after the subway,
whichever
of those two,
one,
after
I don't
those
care.
two, is This Heart of Mine, is the Lucille Brenner and Fred Astaire moment.
Yes. This was probably my favorite segment without Judy.
I think I agree, because it was very concrete in my mind that Judy's segment is hands down my favorite in this film. But the choreography of This Heart of Mine and the scene design and their use of turntables. Their use of turntables was so beautifully Broadway. And I think that it was honestly just a brilliant translation of that stagecraft into the realm of film, where it wasn't clunky, it wasn't weird, it wasn't like watching some bootleg production. It was just so seamless and gorgeous.
Oh my gosh, those various shaded dresses. It was oh my god.
Interesting that they went with red to purple, considering the red yellow contrast that in the original ballroom. So
yeah, I think it makes sense
choice.
because everything else was white and blue outside. So
Yeah. I agree.
Very nice contrast.
Whatever the reason for the choice was, it worked.
Yes. But then I guess a little background on this dancer that you cannot remember the name of, Lucille Bremer.
I know.
she had just come off Meet Me in St. Louis with Judy and Vincent.
Wonderful.
Yeah, but then she did this with Fred Astaire, and I guess they thought it did so well that they were like, oh, she should be his next dancing partner. And they went on to do a movie called Yolanda and the Thief, with Vincent directing as well. And it underperformed, so they never did anything ever again.
Yeah, they must have really, really loved their chemistry in this film. I say that because I think they do have a degree of chemistry in, This Heart of Mine, that they lose in their later scene together, but that's a later problem.
That's a later problem.
So, I can see how that went down.
Yeah. And I guess... Well, of course, I love the chorus as well. They were carrying it when Fred and Lucille, I almost forgot her name too, when when they were waltzing away in the night. But I guess my only other thought was, how do you think she would have reacted to him pulling that bracelet out of his pocket?
See, part of me thought maybe she knew. When she pulled off the necklace, it was like maybe she knew that that's all he was after, and she was like, whatever, I got what I wanted from you tonight, take it. So I might be reading too far into it, and I'm gonna, in all reality, assume that they probably didn't think that deeply into it on filming, but I think I like my interpretation better.
Yeah, I do too, but
yeah.
I do feel like maybe it was like a genuine, like, oh, I'm never going to see you again. Like, my family has me betrothed to this other duke or whatever, so I'll just give you a token to remember me by. And then he's like, oh shit, she's for real. And then she comes running back, and they're like, yes, let's make out!
In the coat. God, that coat.
That coat!
Delicious. No, I think you're right. I think that is the correct interpretation. I was thinking it was probably, like, mink or something. Like, it looked like foxtails, like Arctic fox fur. Something like, I'm willing to bet it was probably legitimate fur, whatever it was. But I couldn't say what animal. Yeah,
but either way, it was glorious, and I apologize to all of the animals.
Because there was a lot of them.
It's like when she spun around, there was like a double layer underneath the first layer, and it was like, oh my god, this is beautiful, but I hate myself for liking this.
I know, God, I know. It's fine. We will never interact with that coat. It is not our problem. We can appreciate it from afar in the time that it was produced in.
Yes. Also, I just love that we spent like 4 minutes talking about the coat.
Just the coat alone. It deserves a moment.
Yes.
God, and her white gown. Truly, I think that her costumes in that scene are my favorite.
Yes.
Like, black cat gowns and all. I think that Lucille's costumes, the gown and the coat, are hands down
and the tiara.
The best. And the tiara! Dripping in diamonds, that woman was.
Then I think the next one was the sweepstakes ticket with Fanny Brice.
Oh, yes. That one also stressed me out. I'm trying to think, where does it... See, it starts with her getting the notification that they've won.
Yeah.
But then we find out that her husband doesn't have the ticket because he gave it to the freaking landlord? Like, I could just feel Fanny's frustration, like her character being like, I married the biggest goddamn moron on the planet.
Yeah.
Like, unforgivable.
I just loved the, 20-second drama she was having with somebody on the phone. She was like, I mailed you a check yesterday. You'll positively receive it tomorrow.
Yeah.
I'll get the lamb chops tomorrow. Thank you.
Yeah, because what else can you possibly do in that scenario?
No. Well, no. And then, I don't know. I have mixed feelings about her husband's shtick, which is like punching himself in the face to like get himself to start talking coherently again.
Yeah, the physical comedy in this scene was a little lost on me.
Yeah, she was literally about to, like, have an affair with this landlord just for the sake of getting that ticket.
She really was. I don't think... Do you think the husband would have cared if she had?
I think he just would have been a cuckold about it.
I think he would have been a cuckold about it. I think he would have been like, well, Fanny, what's all that for? And then just gone about with his life.
Well, it just reminds me of this SNL skit that aired like a year ago or something, but it was with Jason Sudeikis when he was guesting on the show, and they were doing this skit that was like a teacher's conference sort of thing. But then Jason and Ego, they started getting more like into each other as the sketch went on, and then by the end they were like making out on top of his desk. And then they had Kyle Mooney just in the background as the dad, being like, "You guys, like, I don't know how to feel about this. I'm gonna give you to the count of 3 to get off that desk. 1, 2, 2.5. God, I don't know enough math."
God, that sounds traumatic.
Yes, but that he was giving off that same energy as the husband in this skit.
That's so funny.
So yeah, and then the landlord faints after finding out how much money they've got.
Yeah, of course. Which, saving grace. Everybody
Yes.
wins except the landlord.
Yeah, let's just hope he's not in a hospital somewhere.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, you know, what we know about landlords and the housing market and, you know, that whole system, I was kind of okay with him getting the butt of that joke.
Yeah,
I was cool with that.
Yeah.
Guy sounded like a jerk.
Okay. Wait, did we skip one? Did we skip
I think we skipped
the Libiamo?
Maybe.
It was either that one or the Red Skelton sketch.
Oh, the Red Skelton sketch. Truly, I don't know which one comes first.
Okay, well then let's just talk about the Libiamo because I don't want to forget about it.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, the costumes and the set design was god tier.
I think that is the most consistent element of this film that is, like, that actually delivers, is the scenic design. The scenic design and the costume design, they just deliver. They make it happen.
Mm-hmm. I think they were done by Madame Irene. I'm not entirely sure. Don't quote me on that. But, yeah, she was a very big costume designer for MGM at this time, so...
Interesting.
Yeah, she had the eye for camp, she had the eye for glamour, she had the eye for opulence.
She did. She so did. God.
Yeah. But then we had James Melton doing the male part, and... Oh god, this is my Lucille. Who was the soprano?
Was this the one with Lena Horne?
No, that one was Love. This is the one that was for the opera, the La Traviata.
Why don't I remember this one? Was it...
It was the one where all the background extras, they were in like these dresses and suits that were all green and white and stuff. And then the lead soprano, she was in this gorgeous red dress with a white veil.
Why do I have no memory of this segment? I feel so bad.
Oh, I love that one.
God. Okay? Give me the name again.
Libiamo. It's Italian.
Oh my god, yes. It's because it was Italian, and I'm really bad at remembering things that are not in English. Yes. Okay, I'm on the page now. Thank you.
Okay, great. But yes, it was beautiful. It was brief. It was sung beautifully.
It was
the
brief.
orchestration.
Yeah.
Yes. Hence why.
Hence why it just went zoomed straight out of my mind.
Let's see. Then the Red Skelton segment came up.
I think I liked his physical comedy the most out of all
that
of
was
the
his
actors.
specialty, of course.
Really? See, I always think of Red Skelton as, like, musical genius piano guy. I don't know, maybe that's just because that's the legacy that he left for us here in Indiana, you know, but...
I mean, have you seen much of his stuff?
No, I've really only ever heard him talk about in, like, lectures, you know.
Oh. Okay. Yeah, because the only other
But-
things I know about him were, I think there were like 2 movies that he did with Esther Williams. And apart from this, I just haven't seen him in anything else. He's just gone off my radar.
Yeah, he's just a dude from Indiana. That's about what I know.
Oh, great. You know more than me, so that's great.
Yeah. Well,
Yeah.
you know, our high school choir director was a Red Skelton expert, so maybe I just caught more of his ramblings.
Wait,
on that
which
topic.
one?
Dr. Latta.
He was?
I don't know if I want to call him a Red Skelton expert, but, you know, when he taught at the university, they had a whole Red Skelton, like, performance center or whatever.
Oh, so it was like dedicated to him.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. So.
So I was like, of all people to study on film, why Red Skelton?
No.
Oh my god. Let's see. So yeah, then the next one was the infamous Limehouse Blues.
Of course.
Have we exhausted this segment already, or is there still anything else?
I think it's interesting that they chose to have Fred and Lucille appear together again in the same film as different characters. I have feelings about that, but I don't really know what they are.
Could you try articulating them just a little bit more?
Yes, I'm so sorry. I think I would have liked to see a little more variety. You know, maybe see Lucille with a different guy, or maybe, honestly, no, I think I would rather just see Lucille with a different guy, because we saw so much of Fred in this film, and as much as I love him, we could have seen something different.
Yeah, and he had other numbers planned, like solo numbers planned for him before this movie was chopped down to smithereens, but yeah, the fact that we just went with the solo at the beginning and then the 2 dances with Lucille, it's like, okay, maybe have one where you guys aren't in love with each other.
Exactly. It's like the studio latched onto them as a pair and really did not want to let go.
No. And then Yolanda and the Thief happened, and then they were like, okay, we don't have to do this anymore.
Yeah, this segment probably should have been the warning for that film that they should have heeded.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, we totally skipped Love. The Lena Horne bit.
Oh my god, yes. Okay,
so context, just briefly. The song was written by Hugh Martin and Ralph Blaine, who had just come off Meet Me in St. Louis as well. They did songs
Brilliant.
like, I know. This is basically just the Meet Me in St. Louis reunion podcast, or movie musical. But they wrote songs for that film like The Boy Next Door, The Trolley Song, Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas.
oh, of course.
Yes. But yeah, then they just came up and did this song for Lena, which is more like this tropical sounding salsa piece. Would you say it's salsa, or?
I don't know if salsa is the word, but maybe I just don't know enough about salsa.
Well, I feel like maybe this number is supposed to take place in like a Trinidadian bar or something.
Yeah, it really reminded me of the scene in Guys and Dolls where they go to Cuba. For some reason, it made me think of that moment in that film. Maybe, I don't know. I was so fuzzy on just what was going on in the beginning of the scene with Lena and the dude and the other woman, and I don't know, maybe it's the launching in that was weird for me, but
well, I think
the
it's
song
because
itself
was
was
like...
beautiful.
Oh yes, definitely. But I think it's
Of
because
course.
we watched the scene play out first, and then she came in and she was like, "Oh, love. It's either
Yeah.
wonderful or it sucks.
Yeah.
Deal with it."
Yeah. I did have to do a little bit of research on Lena Horne after watching that scene because I was curious about some of the other work that she had done, because I truly just don't know enough about actresses of color during this time period. But I'm curious if you have heard anything about her affair with Vincent Minnelli?
I've heard only in so much as that.
Okay.
Not a lot of
Okay,
evidence.
so we can leave it at that then.
Yeah. Well, Vincent Minnelli is a very interesting figure because he has been speculated as being on like 3 separate levels of the sexuality spectrum, and the
Sure.
most that anyone can pinpoint is bisexual. Since
Okay.
he married Judy and had Liza, and I think he went on to have 2 more marriages with other women. So,
Yeah.
but there was an early point in his life where I think he might have had an affair with a man.
Mm-hmm. It makes me think of, Gross Indecency, The 3 Trials of Oscar Wilde. Oscar Wilde.
Yes.
Yeah, very much makes me think of just Oscar Wilde's life, because he was married, he had a wife, but he was also convicted of, sodomy, whatever, at that time, and sentenced to 2 years hard labor. So, I don't know. Sexuality is fluid. I think that's all we can say about people that we can never speak to.
Yeah. And just from what I had gathered from interviewing Jean's wife a while
Yes.
back, because I did ask her, I was like, how did Jean feel about gay men working at MGM and stuff like that?
Valid question.
Valid question. And she was basically like, well, he viewed it in so much as long as you were a professional, as long as you knew your marks, as long as you were on time, as long as you weren't being a bitch about everything, then he was totally fine with you.
Isn't that just the way that you want to work with all actors? Like, I don't care about your sexuality. Just show up on time, please.
Yes. And she talked about, like, they'd have parties at his house, like Christmas parties or whatever, and there would be a blend of straight and gay men in attendance. So,
Great.
it was just his friends. They were professionals.
Honestly, that's so wonderful. That feels like a piece of queer history that we just don't know about.
No.
Because
No, in fact,
they suppress it so much.
Yes. Well, because we like to think that we have it so good now, when it's like,
Yeah.
and that's the thing that I've kind of had a problem with like revisionist history about film and stuff like that. It's like, we just go ahead and assume that everyone thought about everything the same way, treated people the same way, when there are layers, like an onion.
So many layers.
But yeah, even just people at MGM, it's like Vincent. There was Conrad Salinger, who was one of the orchestral arrangers at the studio. He did the arrangements for Singin' in the Rain, which are like
Brilliant.
God tier. So
They
like,
are.
yeah. Also Roger Edens, who was one of the vocal arrangers, and he was very close with Judy. But
Wonderful.
yeah.
That's great to know.
But yeah. Yeah, so I feel like MGM was a safe space so long as you just did everything the studio wanted you to do.
Yeah.
For better or worse.
Some realms are still that way today.
Yeah. Yeah. Which brings us to the great lady gives an interview.
Yes, she does. God, what a delicious scene there was. Just the power that Judy Garland holds in this scene is immeasurable.
Yes. And actually, her performance is one of the few things that I was able to get, like, genuinely deep information on, which is basically that she rehearsed and filmed her section within the entire month of July 1944, only a month after filming of Meet Me in St. Louis was wrapped, and then she would begin costume tests for The Clock, which was, like, her only non-musical dramatic role at the studio. She did that less than 2 weeks after wrapping on this.
She said nonstop grind. She was after the bag.
After the bag. But this was one of the few like bright spots in her professional life, because it was like she'd gotten with Vincent as Meet Me in St. Louis was in production. She did this, The Clock. She did a Western musical comedy called The Harvey Girls, which is top tier in my book.
Cute. That sounds adorable.
Yeah. And then she did like a brief appearance in the Jerome Kern biopic Till the Clouds Roll By. All of that before her contract expired, and then she had Liza. But then they tried to bribe her back in with an increase in salary and all this stuff, and then she came back. She did The Pirate, did not have a great time.
Sounds like it.
Yeah, and then she and Vincent were like separated professionally. So
Dang. Wait, so who was it that directed The Pirate?
Vincent Minnelli.
It was Vincent. Okay, that's what I thought. Just confirming. Thank you.
Yeah. Well, if anything,
Ugh.
if there's like an old movie musical that I desperately want more people to watch, aside from Singin' in the Rain, Wizard of Oz, all that stuff, definitely watch The Pirate. It is like one of the greatest things I've ever watched. Even though the gender politics aren't the best, because Gene Kelly's character does not take no for an answer, you know? So
I mean, Singing in the Rain, like, we know that this is a trope of the time, like.
Yeah, but because it's him, I'm kind of like, yeah, sure, do whatever you want to me. You know?
Yeah, sounds about right.
Yeah. But anyway, going back to the number, I love how, because they didn't have Greer Garson do this number, it's kind of like a weird reversal for her, because up till then she'd been playing these like ingenue roles, or like teenagers, even up to like being 21 years old. But now she's in the reversal, where she's like, I'm the sophisticated grande dame of the film industry, but I want to play saucy sluts.
Yeah, that is the perfect paraphrasing of the sentiment of that scene. Yeah. Yes. She's like, what if I show a little leg?
Yeah, give them a peep of my legs.
My legs, yes. God.
And then she reveals that she's working on this upcoming biography of Madame Cremetant, the inventor of the safety pin.
Yes, the invention. What is with that? Why the invention of the safety pin? Like,
well, because this would have been a jab at Greer Garson movies, because she's always playing these female inventors and stuff. So now it's like turning it on its head, being like, we're inventing this thing that you're going to use to like put in your baby's diapers and stuff.
Yeah. And especially, you know, she's describing Norway and the tragic circumstances of Norway. Really made me think of Henrik Ibsen, because he was writing A Doll's House. Takes place in just a dark mansion around Christmas time in Norway. And I feel like that might be a nod to the, you know, classical Ibsen drama as well.
I mean, do you need me to recite the first half of that? Like, I could do it like right now.
Please do.
Okay. Story starts in a dark, dank, dingy tenement in Amsterdam. Holland, you know. In the flat of a poor, impoverished family, but of rather good antecedents. Gretchen Cremetant was a very brave and noble woman, who, against the wishes of her father, the Baron, you know, married this young inventor who didn't have a sou, penniless. And there they were in Amsterdam. And then she twerks out.
Like, that whole framing of that narrative is just Ibsen.
Yeah.
So, it's all circular.
Yeah, and then she raps.
A cappella.
Yes.
The fact that it was a cappella was truly what was most impressive to me. I was like, go bitch go.
Yes. Yeah.
They could have done something a little more flattering for her, but what isn't flattering on her? If we're being honest. Like, she could wear whatever the fuck she wants.
Yes. Actually, what was that fabric? Could you tell?
It seemed like they were... it's not... I can, like, feel it in my fingers. You know what I mean? And I don't know what it's called.
Yeah, we all hate that feeling. You just described many a single bachelor in that moment.
Oh, God. Anyway.
I'm sorry. But yeah, anyway, she's God tier.
She is God tier.
Moving on. So I'm sorry, this show, I've already made it somewhat clear to my listeners that it can get a little crude sometimes, but...
It's okay.
Then we move on to the Babbitt and the Bromide with Gene Kelly and Fred Astaire.
Yes, I loved this scene. It was just so precious.
Yeah.
I thought they were gonna kiss. I really did.
Really?
Really, yeah. On one hand, it was like, there was no sexual tension. there was no homoeroticism. I just thought they were gonna kiss as pals.
It's like, oh, buddy.
Yeah.
No kiss.
No kiss. Those were, if I had to sum up the vibes, that's a pretty good summary right there. Not homoerotic, no sexual tension, just platonic kissing.
Yeah. Yeah, I did not see it that way very much, but I really like where you're going, so...
I'm very liberal in my kisses shared.
Yes. Oh my goodness. Yeah, it's funny because a lot of what I'd heard about their segment is that this was the first and last time that they ever did anything together until like 1975, 76.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I think of these two as so iconic and so in each other's wheelhouses. I would think that they would get thrown together all the time.
Yep, nope.
The more you know.
The more you know. Yeah, they actually didn't... The only other thing they did together was they had this trilogy of movies from like the mid-70s to the 90s. They were called That's Entertainment. They were basically like these anthology clip shows of the great MGM musicals.
Of course.
Not talking much about any of the problematic stuff.
Because why would you?
Why would you?
Of course.
But, yeah, they were tapping in their, like... I think Gene would have been in his... Let's see, he was born in 1912. That was 1976, so Gene would have been, like
in his late 60s.
Yeah. Yeah. He was still going at it.
Yeah, I can't math the math there, but late 60s
No.
is a pretty good indicator.
Yeah, yeah. And then I did love their little banter about like comparing themselves to their female dance partners.
Mm-hmm.
Even though I was like, Rita Hayworth is too good for MGM. Thank God she wasn't there. I mean, have you seen Gilda?
Are you gonna disown me if I say no? I have not.
I'm not
I
mad.
know, I'm sorry.
I'm not disappointed. I don't know what to do with myself now.
I'm so sorry.
It's where she does like the great hair flip when they're like, Gilda, are you decent? And then she flips the hair back and she's like, me? And then her ex-lover comes in through the doorway and she looks at him and she's like, oh, sure, I'm decent.
Oh my god, I know that clip because of the freaking TikTok trend like 3 years ago. I do know what you're talking about.
Yes! It's a whole movie of that and I love it!
She holds all the power.
Yes. Yes. It's probably
Brilliant.
the greatest film noir I've ever seen.
Anyway, yeah, that one's also going on my list, so thank you for that.
No problem. No problem at all. I think that was also directed by a woman.
Ah!
Either directed or produced. Definitely one of those two, but it's a...
One
it's
way
a
or
big
another,
deal.
that's some serious power.
Yes, yes. Yeah, I guess my only other thought is I just felt it was weird for us to see Fred and Jean in the afterlife, quote unquote.
Yeah. Especially because they didn't even make themselves, like, that old. Because they say, like, what, 20 years later? And I'm like, you're planning on being dead at that age? That's tough.
That's not where I want them to go!
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a shame. But, was that it? Was that all we had?
I think that was it. I think that was pretty much it for that scene. And just some lovely, friendly banter that I thought was going to lead to a little kiss, but it didn't. Great dancing.
Mm-hmm.
Weird aging.
Yes.
Overall, acceptable segment, I think.
Yes. And Jean killed the goatee.
I want to know how they did the facial hair. I want to know what wig designer did that.
I would like to think that they grew it out, but Gene, I don't feel like he was a very hairy man.
Yeah, I don't picture Gene Kelly as a particularly hairy individual.
Yeah. I mean, I've seen some stuff, like some photos that he did for The Pirate and stuff, where he did, like, have a bit of a hairy chest, but, like...
Yeah.
It was about on the level of like a Calvin Klein model or something. So, like, I don't know.
Sounds about right. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
And then Fred, I think he was in his 40s, so I don't want to think about it. So.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Anyway. Great segment. And then finally, we get to There's Beauty Everywhere with Kathryn Grayson.
Kathryn Grayson. I see why they ended the film on her number. Part of me wanted the little tap duet to be the last thing, but like to be the last note, you know, if we swap those two segments, you know.
But it had nothing to do with women.
But it had nothing, and I understand it had to finish out with a screen full of gorgeous, lavishly dressed women. It had to be that way.
It absolutely had to. And I'm surprised that they didn't sell any like full prints of that to like hang up on people's walls as like an art piece or something. Truly,
because the zoom out on all of the women in their, you know, like copper dresses with the various colored sashes and things, like that was gorgeous. It really was, because they weren't entirely uniform. They were all doing approximately the same thing, but they were doing it in their own ways, and I think that was a great portrayal of like the Ziegfeld girls, you know. Yeah.
I just felt bad for the girl who got the wind machine and the bubbles just colliding towards her face. She was in the background.
That's so tough. There's no way around that.
No. But it was just like this giant glob of bubbles that just floated on towards her face, and it looked like a bit of it stuck to her hair, but I was just like, we'll let that sit there.
Maybe that was like a uniform issue during this segment, because I also thought they did Kathryn Grayson so dirty with her contour. Her contour is like all the way from like the apples of her cheeks, you know, the full thing, you know, jawline all the way over to like the chops, you know what I mean? Like outside the mouth. And I'm like, maybe it was the lighting, I don't know, but they did her dirty.
Yeah. She was in a movie called Anchors Aweigh with Gene around this time, and I think her contour work was better in that one.
Good. Yeah. Because at first I thought it was just for blush.
There are some scenes where I think it was on point, and in others where I don't think it was.
Yeah.
But you don't have to watch that one. That one's fine.
I would be curious to know, you know, who was responsible for that? Who can I blame for that?
Yeah.
But also, overall, you know, she made up for it.
She did, and her dress was fine.
Yeah. There were more fabulous gowns elsewhere in the movie, but they got lots of shots of her in, you know, the gorgeous pink dress, which I have to say probably flattered her body better than a lot of the costumes in the movie otherwise.
Well, I mean, do you mean the one that she sang the song in?
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's the one I was talking about.
Oh.
I noticed it particularly when she was facing the projected cloud sky footage.
Yeah.
And it showed her back end. I was like, oh, okay, I see the hound. I think it's the houndstooth thing going on.
Oh, it must be like part of like the like ruched butt or something. Like, because I can see the like trail almost.
Yeah, maybe.
But it doesn't look like there's anything tight around her waist, so it must be just like part of the dress, maybe. I don't know. Otherwise, it's all like a solid, like pink and purple. I don't know. This waistline on her though works really well. This style of like the lower waist rather than, you know, the super high waisted like right under the bust just works for these skinny women, man. It just works.
I know, they were so tiny.
So tiny.
And like Judy, she was like 4'11".
Yeah, I caught myself thinking, especially in the first scene, like, were they wearing any shapewear? Were they like, did they even have to? I don't think they did.
I mean, I think pretty much every woman had to be like a camera thin, like 95 pounds or something like that.
Yeah.
It was definitely expected of Judy. I can't speak to everyone else, but they needed these people to be rail thin.
Yeah, it's scary stuff.
Yeah. And I just
But
wish they could
either
have
way,
made
her
Gene
gown
more
is
jacked.
gorgeous. I know! Because he looked about the size of Fred, and Fred is not a large man.
No,
Like, they could have done him a little better.
a little better. It didn't help that they put him in those like period outfits from like the 1910s or something with the bowler hats.
What even is that about?
I don't know.
They
For the
did him
sake of
dirty.
the number, I guess.
For the sake of the number, the show must go on.
Yep.
Don't
And
know
actually,
it.
a little more about this number. That bubble sequence with Sid Charisse in the fringe bikini, I guess.
Yeah.
That was supposed to be longer. Fred and Lucille were supposed to be in that number. But then they got engulfed in the bubbles because the machines were too intense. So they were like, okay, let's cut that.
Dang. Yeah, I did find myself thinking, wow, I wish that Sid Charisse had gotten a little bit more feature moments, because she had her one in the beginning and then she had her one in the end. But like, where's the middle? Where's my Sid?
Well, I think it's because beginning in the 50s, that's when she was given more stuff to do.
Yeah, I could see that this was kind of like her breakout, I guess, or at least in the midst of her breakout.
Well, I mean, she was in the Harvey Girls with Judy and Virginia, and she had a bit more acting to do, and I think she sang in that movie.
Ooh.
But
Cool.
I don't think it did a lot for her career.
Yeah, because I've only ever seen her dance. I always thought that she was just a dancer. I guess it would have been really hard at this time to... You kind of gotta be the three-trick pony. Like,
Yeah.
You can't just skate on one talent.
No.
But
Yeah, I think that's what her deal was at this time. She was just like the specialty act or something.
yeah, sounds right. Sounds about right.
Yeah, and then Catherine gets to be the face of the new Ziegfeld girl, I guess? With the neon sign behind her? I guess?
I guess. Felt out of nowhere, but cool.
Yeah. And then, yeah, that's the end.
Yeah. It did. It definitely ended a little abruptly, but also it started pretty abruptly. So what else can we expect?
Yeah. Well, I mean, this movie came out back in the day when high prestige blockbuster movies had like overtures and exit music playing at the beginning of end of films. So like you
Of
go to the
course.
theater, the cinema, you would have an introductory orchestral track for the film, and then you'd leave with something. So that stuff did accompany this movie at various points, but of course we didn't get to see it in the digital copies. But
Yeah, that final cut.
yeah. But yeah. Do we have anything else to add, or do we just get to final thoughts?
I think we just got to final thoughts.
All right.
Honestly, just what an experience this movie is. Just from start to finish, I don't know how else I can describe it besides an experience.
Mm-hmm.
Because he's very clear in that he's not trying to tell a story. So what else can it be besides an experience?
Well, I guess answering to that a little bit, I feel like Flo, he's kind of got the same vibe as like a P.T. Barnum or even a Walt Disney in some cases, where it's like he is seen as this innovator of the theater, and of course he's given credit for glorifying the American girl, which of course I feel like that is offensive to all women across time and
Yeah.
space.
What even does that mean? Like, come on.
It means putting you in a like one of those nude dresses, but you can't see the nipples, so like
Exactly, that's what
Yeah.
that means.
yeah. But yeah, this movie is very aggrandizing towards him, and I don't know how angry I should be considering he's not alive to see this output of work. And also,
Right.
it's with people that I have genuinely positive associations with. Because, but yeah, bottom line, this movie isn't really made for me. I don't know if you'd say it was made for people like you.
Yeah, I would say I appreciated watching it as an educational piece of history.
Mm-hmm.
I think that that is the direction that I am going to choose to come at this film, having, seen it for the first time in November of 2022,
Yeah.
I think that's the most that we can make of it.
Yeah. And I hate to, like, put that kind of statement on old movies, because it's like there's some things, like, I've really been trying to think about the question of, like, what are the oldest movies that our American culture has kept with us up to now? And to my knowledge, the oldest ones have typically been, like, family films. Like, we don't really keep a lot of the dramas, the comedies, the suspenses, even the musicals. Like, we don't keep a lot of those around unless we're, like, in, like, the big, like, film community and we just latch onto everything. But
as we do.
Yeah. But unless you're a Walt Disney or you're a Mervyn LeRoy making The Wizard of Oz or something like that, you're probably not going to stick around with us.
Yeah. I think this film could be, some worthy research for somebody that is producing, like, a golden age musical. Somebody that is producing Singin' in the Rain. You could watch this movie and see what the conventions really were at this time, besides actually just watching Singin' in the Rain, but that's neither here nor there. But, to get ideas about, like, what kind of materials were they using for costumes, the turntable effect, like, that has been a huge element of theater since then, still is a huge element of theater. Nothing will beat the round table. It's so versatile and useful. But yeah, I mean, just to understand the conventions, what to do and what not to do. Obviously, if somebody's watching this film, they're hopefully going to go, oh my god, that's blackface. We don't do that anymore.
Or they could be like, oh my god, this movie feels so gay, but it's made for the straights, so...
But it's for the straights. It really is, like, those handful of queer people that were just slightly influencing popular media at this time, being like, all right, we see you. We don't know who you are, but we see what you did.
Yes. Yeah, because... But even then, it's like movie musicals, they're not doing as well in the 21st century, and that's really a shame. Look no further than La La Land.
Oh, yeah. I think I saw that one. No, I know I saw that one. Didn't make a huge impression on me. I cannot lie.
No, and that's what I think we need right now. It's to have somebody make a big impression on us.
Yeah. I feel very similarly about Broadway. I think what's happening to American film is also very much happening to Broadway, and we're just, like, recycling the same ideas, the same caricatures. Like, it's like we've gone back to the Italian Renaissance, and we're using stock characters now. Like, we need something else. Mm-hmm. And I wish I knew what it was.
Yeah. I have a final question that I ask at the end of every episode, and we can try to see if we can get it to work here, but I'll provide some context first. So, how do you think a movie like Ziegfeld Follies influences the way that films made by the Walt Disney Studios are made to this day?
Oh.
So, for context, let's just say at this time, the Disney Studio is not in a very good creative place right now. They have been doing commissioned propaganda films for the government during World War II. They are relying on that money from the government. They're not getting much from audiences right now because half of the world is blown up.
Donald Duck is in the Navy. That is canon.
Yes. I love that they made it canon. Anyway.
They did. They had to. Whew.
Yeah, but at this time, their main means of staying afloat is by producing these anthology films that have various short sequences that depict animators and artists' interpretation of contemporary pop music. Films like Make My Music, Melody Time, which are kind of inspired by the classical treatment that we saw in Fantasia 6 years prior. So I feel like in a sense, Ziegfeld Follies, it speaks to that same tradition without being a direct, I guess, competitor to that kind of movie. Because they're just in different enough leagues that it's easy to distinguish the two.
Yeah. I don't know. The Ziegfeld Follies just felt like such a unique compilation to me. It doesn't feel like something that I've ever seen another studio like Disney or any other put out. But maybe I'm just missing the right Disney things.
I mean, Fantasia would probably be the biggest thing, but everything else is like relatively small scale. And the thing is, like, MGM, it was like the way that we think of the Walt Disney Company today, MGM was basically that in the 40s. So it's like we bought Lucasfilm, Marvel, and Fox. They bought nearly every Broadway play.
Sounds about right.
Yeah. And it's interesting because both parties did have a relationship with each other at this time, in the sense of, like, as recent as, like, I think the year before Ziegfeld Follies came out, Gene Kelly was trying to work on this half animation, half live action sequence in Anchors Away. And MGM didn't know what to do, so they referred him to Walt, and he basically, like, was like, hey, like, that's a great idea. I'm kind of working on the same thing. He was encouraging them to put the green light on that part of the project. So they're speaking to each other, just not in the way that we would think of.
Right. Yeah. It just feels like a different medium. I mean, both film, but intangibly different.
Yeah. Well, I mean, partly because MGM films, I assume most of them are made for men in their mid-40s. And
I would probably agree with that evaluation.
Yeah. And on that note... that concludes this chapter on Disney Reel to Reel. Laria, this has been a very entertaining experiences. I just love doing episodes in between, like, the serious ones that make me laugh and are informative as well. So you're just like a lovely package to bring.
Thank you so much for having me, Wyatt. I enjoyed watching the film, and I think I enjoyed talking about it even more. So thank you for that.
Yeah, no problem. Maybe we could do something again sometime.
Yes. Oh my.
Yeah, I love a good part 2 cliffhanger.
I know, right? Oh, delicious. Yeah. Who can say?
All right. Well, I guess until next time, have a magical day, everybody.
When you talk about safety pins, who's got safety pins? Safety